Good evening, and today's vlog is going to be slightly different from my traditional technical vlogs. I'm a consultant to startups and small businesses, and over the years I've seen this phenomenon in a lot of these companies, and I thought I'd like to talk about that today. So often I see a startup or a small company where an executive from a large company comes in as a senior executive, either as a founder or as a CEO or another large senior role. And initially, they're all very excited, and a couple of years later, the executive leaves, and the experience is declared a failure, and the company, either the business shuts down or goes through some form of crisis. And I've seen this repeatedly over a few years. Initially, over many startups. My initial thoughts were that, hey, you know what? It's a startup. Most startups fail. There's nothing particularly surprising about that. No big deal. They're successful people. They will recover and continue. And I just let it be at that, and continued on my way until I came across this very interesting blog post in the description below. It talks about what executives actually do, and one of the things that the blog post mentions is Andy Grove's description of what the senior executive's function is in large companies. Now, Andy Grove, of course, was the former CEO of Intel, and he wrote this wonderful book, High Output Management, that talks about what an executive in a large company should do. Essentially, the blog post and Grove's book essentially outline the role of the executive as being that of a coach, if you will. Their job is primarily to ensure that the right people are making the right decisions. Their function is pure management. In that blog post, the author describes that this particular idea of what an executive should do in a company doesn't apply to small companies. In a small company, you do need to be an expert in all areas of the business, and you need to make decisions. You need to actually make the decisions and critical ones, and often actually execute on those decisions yourself. There aren't a whole lot of resources to delegate to or manage people. And this set off a light bulb in my head. There was a pattern of failure I saw with senior executives that I did not see with young founders starting a company, and it's this. A senior executive comes in, and you'll see these, a flurry of the following kinds of actions. They need to hire more people, which is generally a good thing. They will set up process. They will ensure that one-on-ones happen, meetings happen. They'll do this strategy setting, goal setting, and follow-ups. All of these things, and taken individually, each of them is great. I mean, that's what a manager should do. But it turns out that taken as a whole, this is indicative of a symptom of actually failure in a small company. In a small company, there isn't much to manage. Most of what you do involves actually individual contributor work. You need to make things happen. You need to make a sale. You need to build a product. You need to deliver a product. And if you don't do this, your company fails. And so this is something one needs to guard against. And particularly for senior people who are considering moving into a smaller company, this is something they really need to think about before actually moving into the small company. So there is one problem that senior executives have, that as they grow further, more senior in their previous employer, the large company, they find that they are they become they lose their expertise in the functional areas of the business. They are no longer actually programming hands-on. They're not doing sales. They're not actually handling finance or HR, and they slowly lose touch with these these business functions. And when they come into a small company and they find that though they lack these functions, and I find they compensate often with management rather than actual functional functional expertise. So one thing that senior executives can do before they leave a company, and this is a problem because often when senior executives move into smaller companies, it's usually not entirely voluntary. Sometimes it is, and they genuinely want to do their own startup, and they're founders. But often it's the case that they move to a smaller company because they lost a power struggle at their larger employer, or they were passed over for a promotion. Something of that nature happened, and they've decided to look for greener pastures elsewhere. So one piece of advice I would have to senior executives is that if you're this may well happen to most senior executives, and it's better that you prepare for this well ahead of time. So one way you can do this is to make sure that you maintain your edge in your functional area, as well as becoming very comfortable with actually being an individual contributor across multiple business areas. So if you're a VP of engineering, for example, you really need to be a good programmer, even if you're a senior VP at a large company. Don't lose that edge. Keep that programming and technical expertise, edge of technical expertise, architecture, design, sales, marketing, HR. Know how to source candidates. Actually know what channels you need to do to advertise in, what's working, what's not. Same thing with marketing. Understand what social media channels are working, how those channels are being used, and how you could use them in a small startup. Write code, put a product out, try to grow a blog or a vlog, do something of that nature, and try to make sure that you retain the technical expertise you're going to need should you have to move to a smaller company. And this can save a lot of grief further down the line when you actually make a transition to a startup, and then you find that you have to do a lot of things on your own, and you're not just relying on your managerial skills. Those skills will play a major role later on, but initially you need to focus on making things happen on your own as an individual contributor, and not as a manager. And so that's my thought for today. So I'll see you soon. Happy coding.